when I was talking to someone who was in that program recently, she was like, no one writes stuff down. It's all on computer.
Yeah.
And it's like that shift probably happened, not long after 2007 too.
I was the nerd that probably pushed that along. I probably was like right on the gray area. Most people in my classes took handwritten notes, but I did everything on computer, and then I had a lot of people that kept asking me for my notes. Because I took really good notes. Like, while I was being herbs or formulas classes, I'd be building spreadsheets of all the variables of formulas, and then building filters and stuff to pair them all together automatically and stuff, so I could study sets of formulas by specific, filterings. And those. I think I am sure I probably still have those spreadsheets. They were involved, I love doing that stuff. That was really helpful. I remember my formulas teacher asking me for them. They're like, "This is really good. Can I have this?" And I gave it to him. Faye Sun, really good formulas teacher. He was an integrative medicine. He's an MD as well, and he was an integrative medicine teacher at UCLA. And then he taught formulas at my class in my school. He was great.
What was his name?
Sun Fei, Fei. Yeah. Good-looking guy. Like, really kind of svelte, mild-mannered, Chinese guy. He was, I think he was from Beijing. But, yeah, super smart. Really good.
Yeah.
I liked my schools. They were good. And I almost moved up and went to your school.
I know.
You helped. We did buy that house, and then we had to give it back.
Did you actually sign? Did you actually close on it?
Yeah, we had the earnest money in and everything. I remember I made the earnest money refundable, and they were like, "No one ever does that." I'm like, "Yeah, can we just do that, just in case something goes wrong? I'm sure it'll all be fine." And then it wasn't fine, and I'm so glad I did that, because it was like $15,000 or something. I was able to get that money back, and just basically chalked it up as a weekend where we spent our time driving around looking at houses, which was still fun, But, But yeah, think about how life would have been if, that would have been 2010. Yeah. We would have been there. We would have been in Portland for 10 years now.
I know.
And I looked up at that property, and it was, it has tripled in value since.
Has it really?
Yeah, because we would have gotten it for like $360, and it's like an over $1 million property now. Your area has gone nutso in terms of property value. It's crazy.
It is pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy.
It's a nice thing when you own a home. I feel for people in there. It's definitely an issue, and just in terms of rents and people trying to buy homes, and a lot of people are leaving the city. And
yeah, I couldn't imagine trying to move to Portland now. Even going up there, trying to drive around the city now compared to say when I was in Days in Between and we'd come up there for on tour, it's only a dozen years difference, and it's completely different. It's very difficult to move around the city, I bet places in the city are getting more kind of compartmentalized into their own communities, because people just kind of like in LA, if you live on the west side of the 405 in Santa Monica, you probably never go downtown because it's just difficult to get in and out of Santa Monica, I bet that's probably happening in Portland, because before it felt very fluid. You can I live in Southeast and I'm going to go up to Northwest, or I live in wherever, you can just bounce around and go to different places. I remember every time we'd go there, if we go out to get food with different people, we would be driving to all different parts of the city to go get food,
Yeah.
I bet that's changing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think because so many people, it's hard to gauge now because of COVID. People just aren't commuting in the same way. But it's still, I think if you get around by bike, it's pretty easy to get places relatively quickly. But I've heard that the highways can get pretty jammed. My life is all within 2 miles. I can walk to work if I need to. So I don't ever get on a highway. you know?
What's your clinic look like? Like, describe it.
I mean, it's magical.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
I will have to do a video for you at some point.
Yeah.
But it's this big open space. So it's about 2,500 square feet.
Wow, that's big.
Part of that, 800 square feet of that is the movement space that we're now using as offices for people because we're not having any in-person classes or workshops. It's very bright. It's on the second floor, so it feels sort of like you're removed from the world a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's most of the walls are like a very, very light gray, so it just feels very like light and bright. I've made a bunch of plant walls, so there's a lot of plants in the space. And I don't know how else to describe it. A lot of people say it's a very trauma-informed space, which I take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
Maybe because my style is minimalist, so there's not a lot of stimulation. I don't know. But yeah, I'll give you a tour sometime. I think you'd really love it. It's lots of wood, lots of plants, a couple big giant paintings from one of our patients
nice.
who I trade for art, and his art's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had various trade outs at various points. Like this guy here. And for those of you listening, oh geez, don't go doing that. There's these metal frames that are surf photography from my buddy Stan. And now he's like this very famous photographer, and so I bet these things may go up in value or something like that someday. That'd be nice. But yeah, he like hurt his back or something like that, and I have like 3 of his first prints, because he was just getting into doing it. And he's like, "Can I just trade you some surf photography?" Well, I was like, "Sure, sounds great," And fixed his back and got some awesome prints. They're beautiful. And, yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah, I like doing trades. It's nice to. Feels really good to exchange in that way.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes patients just do super nice stuff. Like my one patient I have is, we're reopening on March 1st, and I'm super excited to see my patients. And my first week is already packed, so I'm happy. But one of my patients is a really good woodworker, and he made me this nice like carved sign for like the entryway door that has the living point on it. It's very nice of him. And I want more of that kind of stuff. I like wood signs. Old school stuff like that is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had a question written down here.
Okay.
And,
I'm nervous seeing the look on your face.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure I phrase it appropriately, because I think of you as someone who's an extremely independent woman, right? And so I thought this was a good probing question about that aspect of your character.
Okay.
What are things that most people misunderstand about you the most? Or that, I would just say about you, and then if it tails off into the idea of being an independent person, then great. But like, what are constructs of society that people are like almost like mad at you for not having in your life or whatever? I don't know.
I don't know if I can answer that because I don't know if I would know.
Yeah, or maybe not mad. Mad's the wrong word.
I will say I do think that a misconception is that because I am not married and don't have kids that I'm unhappy.
I expected that as an answer back. That seems totally plausible, right?
Yeah, and that it's interesting how that comes out with people. And that it's interesting that that's an assumption, because to me that seems like an outdated assumption.
Right.
And we're in 2021.
That's right.
But that is definitely one. I think, I don't know what other ones would be.
That's a good one to dig into, though, because the next thing I think of is, why do they say that? And there's obvious things you can say. Oh, well, that's just projection, and or or it comes off as like incredule. Ugh, can't say the word. Like they're like in disbelief, like or if people. It probably just exposes people's own personal problems, because most people will point out aspects of other people that they don't like how it manifests in themselves or something like that. At least maybe that's the cynic in me. That's probably the cynic in me.
I think there's and maybe this is my misunderstanding of where people are coming from. But my sense is that these are sort of certain rites of passage in people's lives, right? Like getting married, having kids. And especially, I think, traditionally for women. And I think we're really coming out of that. I hope we're coming out of that. But sometimes I get a sense from people, even though I run a business, I have a doctorate, I am a very capable human being.
Yes.
That they think that I am not fully an adult, or like not fully like mature, because I haven't gone through these rites of passage yet. You know, but it's like, but I'm choosing not to go through these rites of passage.
Right.
Like, I'm making a choice for how I want my life to be.
There's one aspect of those, constructs, or whatever you want to call them, that people think of is, I remember an old boss of mine saying that he doesn't like to hire managers that don't have children, or at least aren't married. And he's like, because it doesn't show. He would say they lack empathy or something like that. But that's not necessarily true. It depends on, because if someone doesn't have these things in their life, and they would choose for it to be otherwise, I can understand them being angsty people and maybe difficult to deal with, But there's a difference in the motivation of why one person finds themselves in the life that they've carved out, right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty interesting, like that. Like they'll come up with these very like simple gauges of whether something will work out or not, and if it doesn't meet that, then it's not. But I've known you long enough to know that the complexity of all the things that make up Maura Dawgert are what make you excellent. So it doesn't fit all. That's one reason I wanted to have you on the podcast, is because it's nice to chat with people that are that there's nuance to to how you would describe what would otherwise be described kind of like almost flippantly or too quickly by most people, deep thinking or just thoughtfulness and approach, which makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. That's why we are pals. We think about these things.
We do think about these things, and we talk about them.
I know. I like that. That's good. What are your favorite acupuncture points?
I love, I find that I use the extraordinary vessel command points a lot. Those are some of my favorites. So, and I do treat a lot of women's health too, so that's probably part of it too. But man, I love Lung 7. I love Long 7. I use it